Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Helm Developer Call. This is the August 15th, 2019 edition. Format is we'll talk about any announcements, do a quick stand-up, any discussion, and then give some assignments for next week. So for announcements, Helm Summit is coming up. Make sure you register. Did anybody have anything to say about that?
I believe there is a 20% discount code floating around. Does anybody have that? They gave one to us, and I have it. I just can't remember where it is.
Karen tweeted it. Look on the Twitters. The source of all truth in the tech world.
I will go see if I can find it now and drop that in chat, so anybody who wants to use that or share it with other people can.
Okay, and then Josh is not here, so we'll just have to send him some love through the interweb somehow. But we voted for him to be a core maintainer, so welcome, Josh. Any announcements that weren't on the list? Nope.
Oh, hey, this is Vibhav. I'm joining for the first time on this call.
Welcome.
So I was pretty interested in Helm for some time, but I only started contributing recently. So hi, guys. Nice meeting you.
Hi, glad you're here. All right, let's jump into stand-up. You want to start, Butcher?
I can start, yep. And I can do a little bit for Fisher, too, since I talked to Fisher right before he left yesterday. So it's basically like if these were the scales and this is Fisher and this is me, they'd tip kind of like that. Fisher has done a ton of work with Taylor over the last week, getting a whole bunch of things done. He did a major issue queue pruning. So those of you whose issues got closed, you can blame him because he'll be gone for 3 weeks. He's getting married, by the way. And so, no, he went through and triaged a bunch of stuff, cleared a bunch of stuff off, got a bunch of things done in time for the Helm 3 beta milestone, and just really put in a ton of effort over the last week. He did an awesome job. We worked, Farina and I have been working just a tiny bit on getting the security audit set up. I can't remember if we updated on that last week or if that was Friday that we started that off. So that's gonna happen. Oh, that was last Wednesday. I've uncovered a problem with CRDs that caused other people to have to fix the problem. So I think we're making really good progress on that. I think the newer solution will, I hope, work quite well. And then yesterday I did some evaluation on this project. I don't know if you guys have seen it, the Capitan, I can't remember the exact name, but a CRD controller that does Helm 3, and just kind of read through the code and audited that. So I need to send an email back to the person who submitted that thing on the Helm discussion, but it was pretty cool. Yeah, sorry for causing the snowball effect with that one issue. I think that's it for me. Oh, and Helm Summit stuff, but I think that's it for me. I will pass it on to Taylor.
Yeah, I've just been working on bugs for as they come up and the beta 1 release notes. We're very close to the beta. We're just pulling in 2 more last little things with breaking changes. Just as an FYI for everyone, we did have to fix a bug where Go 1.12.8 included a patch in the URL parsing to help fix some sort of CVE that was out there. And it broke a lot of projects, not just ours, but it broke Helm. Since like when we do build, we just say Go 1.12, so it pulls the latest version. So it was breaking the dev v3 branch. That's been fixed in it. If you have any open PRs against dev v3, you're going to want to rebase and push that up, because that's why your tests will be failing. And then if you are a maintainer or know any other maintainers of Go projects, you might want to have them check that out too, because it feels like not too many people really noticed this. So that has been fixed. That's what I was working on yesterday. I'll be reviewing some of those last PRs today that I think Adam's working on. And then we're planning on cutting the beta very, very soon. So that should be coming out pretty soon for everybody to start trying. And then I just have a discussion item later, which is already on the agenda. So let me pass it off to Farina.
All right. So the primary thing that I worked on this week was, aside from some reviews and things, was getting the search stuff completed. You now in Helm v3, if you do a Helm search, that's going to tell you the different things you can search. And right now we've got the hub and we have registries. Registries is the existing behavior, and hub will let you actually search the Helm hub or any other monocular instance if you pass it the URL. And so now you can search for all of those hundreds of public charts to go look at things. And that's the new thing in Helm 3. Let me see who hasn't gone. Is that it?
Bridget?
Bridget, did you have something?
Oh, I don't have something specific other than this is all very exciting and I'm so stoked about Helm 3. And I'll probably be pinging Taylor later. I picked Fisher's brain a little before he went off on wedding leave, but I'll probably ping Taylor and maybe Adam later to make sure that the stuff I'm going to say about Helm 3 at Open Source Summit next week is as accurate as it can be.
Awesome. As for me, just been doing a lot of code reviews, helping people work through some last issues with some of their features they're working on, as well as the last bigger feature I'm working on for beta is around Helm init, lazy creating any config files or system directories that may need to be there. Helm init, really all it does right now is create a bunch of empty directories for you. So it doesn't error out later on when you're running other commands. So it's kind of a pointless command now. And then getting thrown into the CRD world yesterday from Butcher. So I'm still angry, but let's talk about CRDs now. Taylor, you want to kick that off?
Do we have anyone who wants to get first? Yeah.
Wait, first, anybody that's not a maintainer have anything they want to bring up?
So I've been working on waiting on storage classes for the last, I've been working on that. And then one thing we came across was how do you exactly wait on storage class? Like, do you wait on the provisioner or do you wait on something else? So provisioner is supposed to be like the main thing in a storage class. If that isn't up, then the storage class can't do much. So something I wanted to discuss if it is a good idea to wait on storage class. So, sorry, wait on provisioners in storage class if we are waiting on storage classes. So I sent a PR for that recently, and Taylor and I were supposed to discuss this as well. So I just thought like I'd put it out there and then we could like hit it off there.
Yeah, we can discuss it right after. It looks like we're really good on time because nobody's here. So we can talk about it right after we talk about CRDs, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, let's do that then. That's all right.
And then I just had one thing. Hi, I'm Nick. It's the first time here, so hello. I wanted to ask about the thing that I had asked about in the channel, just adding a flag to show supplied values versus, or all values in template. And I didn't know if that was a good idea or where I should start there. This would be my first contribution to both fixing the issue where template debug doesn't show the output of supplied values and also maybe adding a flag to only show values.
So to add some context, if I understand it right, Helm v2, if you do a debug, it shows you the supplied values. But if you use Helm template in v3, it no longer shows that, right?
That's correct.
Oh, because when I rewrote that for Helm 3, I used the actions package instead, which is essentially doing the same as a template drive run. Yeah, that would be definitely useful to re-add in.
What would be the best way to do it? To add it back to debug or use another flag?
I could give a little bit of context on why I felt the flag was important personally. It's kind of a selfish reason, but I help write Reckoner, and it would be nice to be able to just scrape either in JSON format or even if it's just flat file, the supplied or the computed values so that you could do kind of deltas on what you're about to push.
Reckoner, that's why I recognize you. I went to one of your talks when you talked at Google in Boulder. Ah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
How could
Andy
this be
was
your first time in this meeting? I've seen you before.
Yeah, no, Andy has been here. I'm like his doppelganger with the beard.
Yeah, because I could see usages in various CI contexts where this might be useful as non-debug information. So I wouldn't be opposed. Adam, would you be opposed to doing it as a separate flag?
No, but one thing I would maybe look into is instead of having a dedicated flag just for this one specific piece of information, maybe having a flag for like machine parsable output. That way to kind of help future-proof it, just in case there's other information you may need in there.
So machine parsable output for
the
the
object, then have it spit out some JSON, especially if this is for like CDs or like building deltas or anything like that. You're going to want it machine parsable anyway, and that format that it spits out right now with debug and stuff, it's not very machine parsable at all. So I think that would be good for more users as well.
Cool.
Just off the top of my head, though, I'm not sure how difficult that would be, but.
So just make sure I understood correctly, like, so machine parsable for the entire template output when debug is applied, potentially.
Yeah, or if adding another flag, instead of just saying computed values, have it be like a flag that dumps to a machine parsable output for the entire thing. Because that might get you exactly what you need, but also help out other people as well if they need other specific information.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, thanks. I think that should be enough to go on. I appreciate everybody's feedback.
Yeah. All right, you want to kick off CRDs, Taylor? Or?
Yes, oh boy, everybody's favorite topic in Kubernetes land, CRDs. So basically, as we've been working through, so there's been a couple PRs open with people wanting to add back in the CRD install flag, and then as Adam and I have been refactoring out how how like manifests are rendered and how we're like validating manifests inside of it. What we've noticed is that there's not really like a very clear path on CRDs, and based on what we've heard from people in the community, like all the different use cases we hear people say, and then what other people who are involved with it have been saying, there's not really a clear common use case yet not for CRDs, but like how people install them or manage them or what it is, because you have varying things from big companies that have very strict security policies, and they'll come in and say, no, you cannot touch anything cluster level. And some people are kind of like more laissez-faire, kind of go ahead, shotgun it all out to the cluster if you'd like. And so how each person handles those is very, very different. And so right now, I know that Farina, and you can speak more to this, Farina, has been working on trying to get like a more well-defined way of how CRDs are supposed to be handled when you install them, and what kind of the process is behind that. Do you want to give a little bit more background on that, Farina, before I plow forward?
Yeah, so CRDs are interesting, right? They allow you to extend the Kubernetes API, and so they're really beneficial as things like cluster extensions. But people have been trying to bundle them and do lots more appy things with them. And to boot with CRDs, you need global superpowers in order to be able to do it, something you don't want to actually give out to most of your developers. And so sometimes developers may want to install an application, but need somebody else to install the CRD because they don't have permissions. And all of this complicates it. And in Kubernetes land, it's the whole idea of, we didn't really think about this. And when I started poking around, people were like, maybe we should do namespace CRDs. Maybe we should, in every namespace, run in its own API server. How could we do these things? And things got incredibly complicated, and no useful solutions really fell out other than, well, don't do it. And then it's like, well, maybe we need automation tools. And somebody suggested maybe we need a package manager just for CRDs. And then you say, well, what does it do? And what are the rules? They say, well, we don't know. And so that long story short is there is no great ironed out path for this. And we're using CRDs far beyond what they were intended to. And that ends up being a problem. It's easy to develop stuff, right? Because you've got cluster admin in Minikube or Kubernetes Docker, but the moment it hits the real world, especially in enterprise environments, you don't have those powers or those abilities to do lots of the fun application things. So installing an operator ends up becoming a system-wide admin task. And so if we think of an operator, maybe somebody wants to run a Postgres operator, Crunchy Data has one, you want to run it in 2 namespaces, and you got 2 different teams working on that. Well, how do you correlate that at the top and over time? Well, somebody has to have global oversight over everything in order to do that. Different people really can't install it. So for some, it's kind of a mixed bag mess right now without good solutions or answers to it. And then, of course, it gets more complicated because if you install a controller in one namespace and a controller in another namespace, and they take advantage of different versions of the API, and all versions of the API are described in one CRD, right? You can do things like detect that you have the API there, right? You can use, you can make sure you've got the object at the version, but that doesn't tell you if the CRD is there or how it's changed or anything like that. So, all right, that's kind of my spiel of where it's at. Things are not pretty, and I don't think we can solve them in Helm v3 because Kubernetes still has them in beta, but we still need to handle them. And so I'll be quiet now and pass off to Adam.
So another thing with the checking API versions. So this is the thing I kind of discovered yesterday is when dealing with CRDs, it is impossible for Helm to be able to determine and validate the API objects within the cluster. So it has to do with order of operations. So when we install anything into cluster, we render first. Before we render, we get all cluster resources because we have conditionals that you can put in based on cluster resources. So the API versions are available when we do the rendering. Now, before we are able to parse a CRD object, we have to render all the manifests to pull it out. So when we render the manifests, it will not have the CRD in there. But then say we create it for the user, then all of a sudden your conditionals are invalid because there's an API resource that was created that was not in the values when we did the rendering. Now this can be a major issue when you have a conditional within your chart that checks to see was the CRD created. Like for a while, Service Catalog had options where you could go the CRD route, or there was other options you could do. And there was conditionals in the chart saying, oh, was this CRD installed? If so, render this other stuff, otherwise do these. That would be broken if Helm itself installed the CRDs because it would never know it at the rendering stage that it was installed. So by the time you went to actually install the resources, checked the CRD thing, it would be based on before it installed the CRD. So it would say it's not in there. So it's kind of a chicken and an egg kind of a thing. We can't render before we install those cluster resources since we inject cluster information into the rendering engine for the chart. One possible solution I thought of for that was to break out CRDs completely into a first-class citizen, actually have a defined space within the chart that says, hey, this is where you put CRDs if this chart is going to contain a installable CRD, and then have it declared somewhere, whether it's in the chart YAML that, hey, there's a CRD available, or that it checks to see a specific location, and then do not run that CRD through the rendering engine. So CRD management would happen before anything else. So the CRD would be installed, then it would do the rendering after that step. So we could still include a flag for handling, just like the CRD hook kind of a thing, but it would be completely broken out from the rendering process into its own thing. That's the only way I have thought of getting around this. So if anybody has any other ideas.
Yeah, and to note on this, like we wanted to have this discussion out in the public here with the community, just so people understood like what the thought process has been and what we've been going through as we've been working on this for Helm 3. And we're trying to be extremely cautious just based on past experience. Like Helm 2 created, like we all know what the rough edges are on Helm 2, because we made assumptions back then that didn't turn out to be valid, which we had to. I don't think any of us regret those decisions, but we've learned from those mistakes now that we're coming out to Helm 3. That's why we aren't pushing like, here's the way to do CRDs, because there isn't one, like Farina said, defined by the community. And there's a lot of this whole chicken and egg problem that Adam's talked about. So as we're going out to Helm 3 right now, there isn't like a particular, this is how you do CRDs, because there isn't something already defined. And we have, like Adam said, a good possibility, but we're trying to see what the community comes up with. So we don't try to put in a standard that isn't actually a standard. We want to make sure we're following what the community is doing. So that's kind of where we're at with the whole CRD thing, and we just wanted to get that out there in public so people know.
And then I think, a lot of the pressure we're getting is from people just wanting to stand up application, whatever, or, it's projects wanting really clean install steps for their project. In their README, they just want to say, oh, just do a Helm install this. But as far as when you're operating an application, that's when all the quirks come in, and where you're going to run into a bunch of issues with a lot of the hand-holding that we're doing. So the benefit is ease of use, quick stand-up, or production operations focus, where it's declaratively handled. It's not so much magic. You're a little bit safer. So those are the two things that we're trying to balance, is just make it easy for people just trying to stand stuff up, or make sure you don't delete production data.
Well, I think there's a
As
middle
you
ground.
can see my opinion from that last comment.
Two things. One, we're kind of at time, and so we should probably grab who the people should be for next week. And I think I can sign up to do moderation next week, or notes if somebody wants to take the other.
We can do notes next week.
Okay. Then we can probably continue. My thing on this, the other thing was going to be, we need to make it easy for users, even though it's not going to be perfect, right? So that means we need a page in the documentation. If we want to do something that goes ahead and installs CRDs, but it can't install a CRD, maybe because of permission denied, we should have some human direction for people to say, hey, the account you're connecting with doesn't have permission to install the CRD, or something like that, just to make it very, very clear. Please contact somebody who's got permission. And maybe there's another Helm command where, from a chart and a chart version, you can actually extract the CRD in a rendered form, so you could copy and paste that into something else, into kube control or something like that, for somebody who did need it, right? There may be a human way to make some of the experience around interacting with this easier. I haven't really thought it through, but I think that's going to be an important part. Don't just mess up production data. Don't just think logically about what we can do, but let's make the experience better and help kind of people navigate this space that's still very squishy and being formed. I think that would be useful.
Great. I think that's good.
Yeah, Farina, I think that's a fantastic and very important point. And at the same time, I totally agree with Adam's like semi-facetious, well, do we want your hello world to be great, or do you want your production to be safe? I mean, obviously, if we have to choose one of those, but it would be great if we don't have to choose.
And I think it's also important to spell that out for people, because not everyone thinks about, is my production safe? And what does that mean and entail? Right? We've long assumed that here on Helm, and it's been talked about in numerous circles, but I go into other places where people are like, I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to do this. And I might bring up the question, is that safe? And they may not have thought about it. Well, what happens in these situations? Well, I don't know. But they're very giddy about the excitingness of it. Well, they haven't taken the long-term view on it. So I think sometimes explicitly spelling that out helps people think things through, and they're like, oh, now I get it. But if you don't say it, they stop at their desire instead of thinking, how does this really work? If I've got to run something in production for a year or longer, the way you think about it radically changes beyond my hello world or just spinning it up. And if you're like me, who starts lots of new things, that run something for a year isn't on the front of my mind often enough.
So I think the call to action I'm hearing there is we want to make sure that operability considerations are front and center in the stuff we document, the examples we put out there, not just, look, this is how you stand this up on day 1, but instead, this is how you can use this day 200 and not have a disaster.
All right, and we are.
By default, you could disable installing CRDs, and then if a user would want to install CRD with that, they could give a flag like with CRDs. So that could be one way we could go, maybe, because then we wouldn't have to think of the secure. We obviously would have to think of the security aspect, but then wouldn't have to think of you know. Installing CRDs by mistake or giving like default installation of CRDs.
Okay, and we are 3 minutes past right now.
I'm going to stay on, Adam, and talk with Vaibhav about the storage class thing. If anyone else wants to stay on, but I think we can call it. We don't have to keep recording.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything about storage classes, so I'm going to go ahead and stop recording and end the meeting. But thanks, everybody.
And thanks for taking notes, Bridget. If you want to reach out to me offline, we'll get you right access to that document so somebody doesn't have to approve all your stuff.
Yeah, sorry.
I think I got her right access, but I sent it after she'd already loaded, so I don't know.
Oh, I didn't even think of reloading. I just figured you didn't have time to change it. But okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.